What is up, everybody? RLTK podcast. Jordan here, chilling with Chris. Chris, what's going on, bro?
What's up with it, man?
Hey, so we're in a different location again, but that's okay.
Yeah,
I think this is home base now for real.
there we go.
So over the next couple of podcasts, you guys are gonna see this location evolve. Might see some lights on the wall, see some different chairs.
Hey,
see a different setup.
This is a bottom story.
Hey, bro.
You know what I mean?
You know what I mean? We just set up today because we wanted to get a podcast out. It's been a little bit, so
Yeah, for sure.
wanted to get into it, get back into the rhythm.
Yes,
We got a
sir.
ton of guests that we need to schedule. I'm just thinking about all the people that I've been meeting lately that I need to get on this podcast to have conversations about youth culture, youth ministry, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah,
It's been dope, man.
Cowboys are trash.
Look, man, let me tell you something.
Absolute garbro.
Cowboys
Stink.
I'm gonna say this right now.
Dak Prescott out for the season.
Let me say this
Crazy.
right now. Okay.
Crazy.
Let me say this right now.
Go ahead. Say it. Cowboys stink.
The Cowboys are trash.
And
And
the Cowboys are trash.
no, and they need some work. Okay. Now, here's the thing, man. Okay, I've been playing a little bit of Call of Duty. I had to take my mind off of the Cowboys. So
Y'all are tripping on these zombies, bro.
I've been playing some Black Ops 6. Okay. Just recently dropped.
Yeah,
Okay.
Black Ops 6 is fire.
Black Ops 6 is fire.
Nuketown, Mosh Pit,
Bro,
hardcore domination or hardcore
Fire.
period 24/7.
fire, dude.
And then they got that 10x10 mosh pit hardcore now. You seen that?
Yes. Oh, bro. Okay.
Yeah, it's 10 on 10.
You
Pure carnage.
was on to something, by the way. There's this thing. I saw this video. I think it was last night, actually. It's called skill-based damage. You heard of that?
No.
And you was talking about it when we was playing the hit markers, bro. It
Bruh,
actually is
I don't
a problem.
understand how I can be playing hardcore and not killing people.
It actually is a problem. This Ute, bro, is a streamer. He zoomed in on a headshot he was taking. Guess how many hit markers he got?
3?
7.
No.
7 hit markers on a headshot.
Skill-based. So if you're good, they're making it take more.
Yes.
That's
crazy, ain't
it? On hardcore?
No, I think this was standard.
Just standard?
Yeah. Even
Bro,
standard.
I feel like on hardcore they be doing that though. Sometimes I be hitting the cat like 2 or 3 times on hardcore, bro, and you don't die.
Facts, bro.
I'm like,
It's
what?
insane. It's
And I mean,
crazy.
I get it. Like, if you're using an SMG over distance, technically it's supposed to have less whatever.
Uh-huh.
But anyways, I digress.
Yeah.
So, Cowboys are trash. Black Ops 6 is dope.
Black Ops 6 is
By the way,
yeah.
Reframe, our curriculum company, we dropped some merch wearing one of the hats. Got to get you some. So, jump on our website, reframeyouth.com. We got hoodies. We got shirts. We got hats. And they just got dope little sayings in the trenches.
Mhm.
In the mix, hood, just different things. And then one of them's got our vision statement on it. So yeah, man, if you rocking with us, get you some merch.
Facts, man.
And be a part of the culture. But yeah. So today,
let's do something, man.
We wanted to jump into an interesting conversation that everybody's having right now.
Yeah. Everybody's having.
The election just happened.
The election
was it last week or was it this week? Was it last week?
It
was last week, right?
Yeah.
And so obviously we have people on both sides of the aisle, people who are freaking out, people who are elated.
Well, some people,
Mm-hmm. And so
yeah,
it's just interesting to just sit back, watch, reflect, think about it, view it through the lens of worldview, view it through the lens of youth culture, view it through the lens of trying to engage young people with the gospel. I was having a conversation with my friend who's a high school teacher. Shout out to him, Justin Belt. He's a high school teacher in Dallas and, Frisco to be exact. But he was just talking to me about, I was asking him how he's doing. I was like, man, today's heavy. Like, there's students here who are scared, And, whether that's a perceived threat, real threat, I'm not going to get into all that.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things I think about is that, like, people have real feelings towards what has transpired.
Yeah.
In terms of who won, right? Obviously, we know Donald Trump won.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really interesting to see, and then to see like the reactions on social media, like how people are responding and how people are behaving.
Yeah.
I saw something super interesting from this dude who made the prediction that we're going to have the largest mental health epidemic post-election because of all the marketing surrounding the election. So how it was positioned, like, yo, if this person wins, it's the end of everything. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so whether there's merit to that or not, the point is, what does that plant in the psyche of a young person?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It makes me think of a conversation we had with Ray Robles, my homie who's a professor at GCU. Shout out to him.
Yeah.
He was talking about the idea that why are we shocked that Gen Z is anxious and afraid when, particularly Gen Z students who've grown up in the church, because they've been taught like Jesus is coming back soon, the world's going to end, everything's going to blow up.
Yeah, I know.
You know what I'm saying, like that's one of those things that's constantly been repeated to them. And his point is, no, the world is ending as the generation before knows it, which is the way that they understood culture and reality is shifting. And so they're like, oh, Jesus is coming back. And it's like, well,
their concept.
No, it's just that your way of understanding the world and your control of the world is shifting, right? It's not there in the way that it was previously. And so, yeah, man, I just think about some of those things. It's just interesting to just watch. What are you kind of seeing as you tread through social media and watch TV and
having conversations.
Yeah, bro.
For me, I see that I don't think we actually know what to actually value. I don't think we know what to hold on to. And so what I mean by I'm trying to find the words to say this, because I think there is a profound distinction between what society is trying to create versus the blueprint God has made for existence. Right. So I think that there is a particular design between this idea of men and women, society, parents and children, marriage, like these things that we give titles to for us to understand what they are. I think it already has a blueprint to it. And I think society is trying to make changes to those things, but don't know how to make changes to those things. And so I think that a lot of these changes is based off emotion. We're making decisions that are to some degree emotional based. It's not really well thought through. I think if we use the principles of logic or the laws of logic, I think God has given us the tool of thinking and logic to understand what has been determined, right? What he has said, what is true, what is authoritative, what is accurate, pertaining to his nature, his attributes, and his reflection of what he thinks of us and what we are to him. I think society is just going off. I think society is just lost, bro. And I don't mean it in a Christian sense, like, oh, they're lost. I mean,
it's true. Talking.
I think society doesn't know what they're doing, and they're slowly crumbling. And I don't think we know what to think about. I don't think we know what to actually process through. I think people are winging it. I think people are clinging on to what they think has to be true, not instead of what is true. And so when I look at
based on emotionalism,
which is based on emotionalism, exactly, right. And so I think when I see society, when I'm observing all these things, I'm like, man, I mean, when I look at it, I'm like, I don't think we know how to structure society. I don't think we know how to put it in a way that is beneficial. And that's the thing, right? Like, why does society have to be beneficial? Like, what does it even mean for something to be beneficial? It has to be a long-term beneficial, not a short-term beneficial, right?
Yep.
And so if we're trying to build society in a way that's beneficial, we have to die.
So, we have to think long-term.
We have to think long-term.
Ourselves.
Exactly.
Which isn't a thing that we do in an individualistic, hyper-emotionalized, self-actualized culture.
Exactly.
To your point, I was at a conference in Cali last week, and I got to give a talk on like mental health and the gospel, talking about Matthew 6 and Jesus's words about not worrying, right? And so I was talking to students and student leaders, and one of the things that I was kind of trying to impress was like, hey, I think one of the dangers is that we have made how we feel the determining factor for what is true and how we should live.
Yes.
And our emotions are just too flippant for us to live that way, bro.
Correct.
Like, it's just like my emotions change on a regular. Like, I mean, shoot, I wanted to do this podcast and I didn't want to do it. Then I wanted to do it again. I want to eat, then I don't want to eat. Then I want to eat again.
I always want to eat, though.
I like my wife, then I don't like my wife. Shout out to my wife. I love you. But that's the truth.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
sometimes I like my kids, sometimes I don't.
Yeah.
And so, like, they do that to me. Sometimes it's like, Dad, I don't want to talk to you right now.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not rocking with you right now. And I didn't even do nothing. You just woke up funny.
Woke up.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or you haven't eaten yet or something.
Yeah.
So it's like, if I'm going to base my reality existence and like how I engage with others and what I perceive to be like beneficial based off of how I feel, bro, that is a terrible existence.
Yeah, it is.
Like, I just think about it, like standing back and thinking about how I feel, and then, okay, assuming that those things are happening in other people, like, man, your emotions change so much.
It changes.
Like, how do you stay in relationship with people? How do you stay content? Like, how do you,
at
like,
a job? Or
or in a job? Like, the moment someone makes you feel some type of way, I'm quitting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm changing school. I'm not doing that anymore. Or the moment something gets hard, oh, that wasn't for me. It's like, no, like, there are things about the world that we live in because of sin and brokenness that make it difficult to do certain things and so on and so forth. And so I think about all that and I'm just like, how much does that tie into like everything that's transpired in our election, like pre-election, in terms of like, I think about the marketing, the election itself, like how people voted, and then also post-election, like the things that I'm seeing now.
Yeah.
And the things that people are saying in the wake of the election.
Yeah. I think when I look at this
I'll say this one more thing too.
Yeah.
I think another thing that's interesting is like Gen Z, young people are watching grown people lose their minds.
Bro.
Literally acting a fool.
It's crazy. It's insane.
And then we want them to like listen to us?
Yeah.
When we just out here wilding on social, wilding on TV, making a fool of ourselves, saying stuff that like don't make sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like what?
Yeah.
And then you want us to follow you?
Right. Yeah.
I'm good.
No, facts. And I think
crazy, bro.
It's a lot to it, you know, because I don't think it's like we'll believe anything that sounds interesting or
makes us feel
appealing
good.
Or makes us feel good
in the moment.
Yeah, you know what I mean, and it's 100%. Very hard. And this is why I think that society is crumbling, is because we're not emotionally mature enough to have conversations.
Bro, it's so good.
You know what I mean?
So true.
We cannot stand being challenged with ideas. Like, if you told me I was wrong, my ears perk up.
Please let me know why. I'm interested.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, I get
I'm
excited.
about to learn something.
Exactly. And so it's like we're dealing with belief systems here. And I think people are trying to grasp onto something because I think they're being told what to believe, because I think their reality is being shaped by what they've seen and experienced. Which is interesting because experience doesn't really, to certain degrees, experience doesn't really do much for you, right?
Say more about that.
Like,
that's interesting.
Because experience depends on your interpretation of the experience, right?
Okay.
And I think that, me and John was talking about this a while back about the idea of memory. Like, memory is important, but also is like, what do you remember in your remembrance, right? You only remember what happens to you. You don't remember what happens to everybody else that was around you in that circumstance. And so I think when it comes to experiencing things, we unknowingly misinterpret the experience because we only think about how it is to us.
That's good.
And so I think like
Yeah, if we're not experiencing it and interpreting the experience through an expansive worldview, then I would agree.
yeah,
And I mean, there's
exactly.
still danger to that, anyways. And I think somebody was doing some research. A guy that I worked for back in Phoenix, who owned like a private practice. We were
Mhm.
talking one time, and he was telling me that there was some research done on the retracting of memories, like from the
Mhm.
brain,
Yeah.
or not retracting, but like retrieving of memories.
Say it again.
Retrieving memories.
Oh, okay.
So like when you remember something, what they found is when every time you pull a memory, it changes slightly.
That's true.
So like how you remember
I've
it
done that.
gets a little bit distorted every single time you pull that memory.
Yeah.
And so like what actually ends up happening is over time, how you remember that thing begins to actually change
Hmm.
from what actually happened, which is
Dang.
interesting.
That is interesting.
And so, like to your point, with experience, there's only so far we can get with that.
Yeah, it's true. There's only so far, and I think that they're trying to sell us a lie based off what we have experienced. I think some experiences are not really told the full story, and so for example, right? It's like okay, so being black, right? Right. That was one thing that was pushed a lot in the election. Me personally, I did not like, but being black in America, how can I really say what it's like being black in America when I'm just one black person?
Yeah, we're not monolithic.
You know what I mean? And so it's like I have my experiences of what it's like being black in America, but it doesn't mean that's your experience, right?
Yeah, it's not.
And so what does that mean for me when it comes to policies? What does that mean for me when it comes to voting and political views and how society ought to be operated? And the reason why I bring up black is because at the end of the day, um, I don't think it really matters about. I don't think it matters about race. I think it matters about the structure of how we ought to operate in society as a whole, right? And so I don't. When it comes to racism and when it comes to even like dealing with police officers, dealing with any of those things, I don't really want to hear a lot of that. I want to hear how the structure of the family unit can be upheld.
Just for clarity too,
Mm-hmm.
Chris, you from the hood,
right?
Okay. Just wanted to make that abundantly clear.
No, facts. But that also has its problems too, right?
Yeah, 100%. I'm just saying, you're saying something that most people would be like, not expect somebody from where you come from,
Yeah,
to say what you're saying.
Yeah, because I'm tired of it, right? And so, what's more important for me, like the fact that I was black and I grew up in that type of environment, or like because of the family structure that I didn't have,
Yeah.
right? Which all races to some degree have, by the way, right?
Yeah.
And so, what I'm trying to appeal to is the nature of existence, the nature of design, not who's targeted. I think to solve the idea of who's being targeted is to understand how you ought to act in a particular way that God wants you to act. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
It's like,
I hear what you're saying. I would say this though.
Yeah, I mean,
so in regards to what you're saying, so I would add to it, and I would say I think it's both. I think what we're arguing about, or the problem, is that we're trying to decide to what degree it is one or the other. And I think in certain perspectives, it's like all race. And then in certain perspectives, it's like all not race.
Mm-hmm.
And I think both have something to do with it. But to what degree and in what capacity is what is incredibly difficult to find out. And I think it's
I don't think it is.
You think so? You think it's not?
I think.
Tell me more.
I don't think it's. I think. Okay, so what I'm trying to speak to is the. I mean, even Thomas Sowell talks about this, or even to some degree, some of the old black thinkers even thought about. Even Martin Luther King spoke on it. You know, even solving the idea of poverty. He said you can't look at it through a racial lens. You have to look at it through an economical lens, right? There are some things that aren't really racial.
Yeah.
You know what I
I
mean?
agree with that.
And so, like, all right,
But
maybe I misinterpreted, or maybe I didn't understand what you was trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm trying to get at is that regardless if I'm targeted or not,
Mm-hmm.
the structure how I ought to obey still exists.
Yes.
And I should live in that manner,
Yes.
not
Regardless of what color of skin I have.
and not in a response of who's targeting me. You know what I mean? Because
Mhm.
they can't, that's something that they can't get rid of or do anything about because it's just pre-installed. I don't like the fact how it's moved up to the political things. I don't think that's where it belongs. That's because it makes me think, what is the church's position in all of this? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Is it actually political, or is it something that they can go and imitate themselves without a political involvement at all?
That's a good question.
You know what I mean? And so that's when I was looking at everybody doing their thing and policies and all that stuff like that, I'm like, did you really have to bring in all of that just to make a point? You know what I mean? And it's like, when I think about Gen Z is watching all this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, what are we teaching them about the natural structure of the blueprint itself?
Mm.
What are we showing them? Like, I don't want to depend on politicians.
Agreed.
I don't want to do that. I want to depend on the natural things that's already been said. That's what I'm trying to say. I think culture in itself is confusing enough. I think we need to get back to understanding what is already been pre-installed into our DNA, into our attributes, into the different.
So
You
you're
understand
talking
what I'm saying?
metaphysics to some capacity.
Yeah, to some capacity, exactly.
Yep. I get you.
And so, I mean, that shows these are just my thoughts.
And
I'm trying to, and I'm just trying to really flush those things out. That's why I'm bringing it up
No,
on
that
the
makes
podcast.
sense.
You know
No,
what I
I
mean?
get you. So yeah, I think those are challenging questions, right? I think because you're saying like you don't think the church should be involved like that, or what is the church's involvement in those things?
Yeah,
Which is
exactly.
a great question.
Exactly.
And I think the hard part about it is there's like so many different stances the church takes on it. So there are some churches that wouldn't engage at all. There are some churches that would highly engage. There are some churches that would say, just go be the church and solve those issues politically by being the church.
Mm.
Right? Some would say, and I think obviously the scripture says this, right? The government's responsibility is to like basically prevent evil, or like to hamper evil, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we should vote to that end. But then the question becomes, well, which side's hampering the most evil?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it becomes a debate about that.
Yeah. Yeah. And
so some would argue that racism, social justice is a larger evil. Some would argue that abortion is a larger evil.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Some may argue that something else is a larger evil, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so like all this stuff gets thrown in, and makes the conversation convoluted and complicated, I think.
Yeah.
And so but I don't know how to answer that question.
Yeah, I'm posing it to everybody.
Yeah,
I'm posing it to myself. I'm posing it to you. I'm posing it to people that are watching. It's this election was very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
They've played cards that it was very bold of them, and it was to the point where it was like a gender war. You know what I mean? Of who's voting for who and why they're voting for the opposite person. I'm like, okay,
definitely in the context of families, for sure.
Yeah, facts. And so it's like, I don't think this is.
If you don't vote this way, you're against these people. If you don't vote that way, you're against this.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
Yeah.
Huh?
And it's
interesting.
I don't think politics is supposed to be that serious in the first place. Me personally, I don't take it that. I take politics as serious as it needs to be, but it's not to the point of where we go behind each other's backs and votes, or it's because just because I'm a man and I vote for Trump doesn't mean I'm against women. It doesn't mean that. You know what I mean? Like, why are we actually voting? And this is why I say we're in a value war.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we know what to actually value in society.
Mm.
This election showed me personally that we don't know what is actually intrinsically valuable.
Mm.
And I think a lot of people think they're right. And I think that's a trap. Because once you think you're right, you've now deceived yourself. There's no way there's no way you can actually know you're right about something unless authority itself has said this what it is. So there's no possible way you can actually be right about something. It's very hard to know what's right, in my opinion. And so it's like we're too entitled. And I think society doesn't know how to structure itself, bro. I worry about the next generation. I worry about Gen Z and I worry about Gen Alpha. That's why I push the questions that I do. That's why I ask them the way I do. And because I think we don't know how to speak about these things. And I think, and a lot of it is metaphysics. I'm not going to lie, because it's like there are some ideas that aren't real. And there's some ideas that are tied to reality. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like we're making up things that doesn't exist. It doesn't tie with the reality of natural law or biology or the different sexes. We're just making things up because it sounds good. It sounds interesting. But I don't know if it actually is a thing. And we're creating culture by that. And the reason why, like, politics reflects politicians reflects us. They
Mm-hmm.
reflect our mindset.
Mm-hmm.
They darn near don't even have a mind of their own. They're reflecting how we think.
Yeah, they're trying to market to us to get into a position.
Exactly. And so,
and trying to say to enough people the right thing.
Yep.
To gain that political power.
Yeah.
And I'm sure like there are politicians that genuinely are in it to be civil servants and for the people.
Mm. Yeah.
And I think if I was to bet my bottom dollar, I would say most of them probably aren't in it to be civil. It's more about the position and the power, but it's just an opinion.
Fair.
I think one of the things that's interesting is, and I was thinking about this question myself, I ask you, Chris. So like you're a youth pastor or you're a youth worker or whatever, and you're in a context where kids are on both sides of the aisle, or kids are coming from families that are on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, hey, my family voted for so-and-so. Hey, my family voted for so-and-so.
Mm.
Like, how does somebody who's trying to love youth and show them the gospel deal with a situation like that? What do you think?
Mm.
Big question.
Very big question. But I don't think it has nothing to do with politics at all. I think
I don't disagree with that.
if you're trying to show them the gospel, which is it's fun because now you have to learn how to communicate it in the culture you live in. But I think one of the best ways is love and servitude, love and serving. Sometimes it's that simple.
Yep.
Sometimes it's not a profound thing. It's really simple in the sense of loving them where they are. It's hard to accept people for who they are. Once you see their nature, it's like, that's who you really are. All right, cool. I'll accept that. And I'm just going to love you for who you are.
Yep.
And if we ever get into deep conversations, I think transparency and honesty, it matters. But I think once you get to that point of, because I noticed that too, when you want to have a deep conversation with somebody, but you don't know how, but you're just there for them and you love them and serve them. They come to you. It's like there's a moment when they come to you and they ask you a question.
Yep.
And that's your opportunity. And so I think loving and serving someone prepares you to have the difficult conversation with somebody. That's what I think. That's what I would do.
That's good.
You know what I mean?
So you would say, like, to tie it into the question, you would say the goal for the youth worker should be to get those kids to love each other anyway.
Anyway, love is an objective reality. And it's not just an objective reality. It's an objective moral principle. And so I think you find a way to help them to see that regardless of who voted for who, that love exists. I think that's tough, man, to show the existence of love and where it's at. And I think that's the best way you show where love is when there is opposing views. And so that's what I would say. Show them how to show love, even with the opposite end, because I think that opens up the conversation. I don't have to force it. I don't have to push it. I don't have to weasel it in. It comes naturally, right? Because, I mean, you see it on social media. If you voted for such and such, we're no longer friends. I'm like, gee, I don't even know where you get that from, but I'm going to love you anyway, big bro.
But once again, like, it comes back to the emotionalism thing. If emotions are central to who you are and they define who you are, then if I feel some type of way about something that somebody did and I feel like it's severe enough on the emotional scale that I've imagined up in my mind, then that is cause enough to cut them off. And then I think like just the nature of social media and the fact that there's so many people saying that you should do that and that's appropriate. Yeah. People are just being swayed by that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. We're being swayed.
We don't see the value in disagreeing. We don't see the value in hard conversations. We don't see the value in
thinking.
Like being challenged on our viewpoints and our ideas and how that actually might be a part of the process of us having a really refined position on whatever it is that we're talking about. It may not just be politics. It could be theology. It could be secondary issues in the faith. It could be how church works, whatever, how to raise a family. Like taking in alternative perspectives is only going to further refine and help you in terms of how you decide to live your life. You get what I'm saying? It's actually beneficial to you if you can perceive it that way, right?
But also,
like I'm always curious, bro. Like I remember when I was a kid, back growing up in England, there was a situation where this dude who was a part of NF National Front, right? And so their street name was the Nigga Fighters. That was their street name, right? And so they were connected to the British National Party, and they, racist.
Yeah.
And so I remember this dude's on the phone, like calling me the N-word and all this stuff. And like, I wasn't like afraid. I was just like, what makes you hate black people so much?
Yeah.
And I asked him, I'm like, bro, like, why? Like, I'm genuinely like curious. Why do you hate black people? He's like, because one of you guys killed my brother. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so like, I don't agree with him.
Yeah.
But I understand where he's coming from. And I'm like, I might low key feel the same way you did. I'm not saying it's right.
Yeah.
But now like I understand.
Yeah.
And that's a more extreme way of me saying like, yo, when someone doesn't think the same way that you do, it's either an opportunity to dismiss them, write them off, and label them and box them as evil or whatever it is you want to label them as, or to hear out their perspective. And if you hear out somebody else's perspective, there's also opportunity to change their mind, right? Yeah. And so like I don't have an opportunity to win them if I won't have the dialogue, have the conversation, hear them out, find out where there's common ground, and then share.
Yeah.
And I think for the youth worker, it's probably going to be beneficial to A, hear both sides out, and B, bring it together in the gospel. Like, yo,
yeah,
like, what is our responsibility as Christians then? And then like challenge, like, hey, what are the issues with your position on this side, and what are the issues with your position on this side? Like, where is there compromise in the gospel with your position based on what you decided to do.
Mm.
Because rest assured, there's compromise on both sides. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
And so it's
Yeah,
like,
I
now, if you want to argue about to what degree, right? Like who's compromising more, sure. But that's not actually what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to like, okay, what can you own? What can you say, okay,
Mm.
I went this way, here's why, but I see that there's issues here that I have to address and deal with and own up to, and vice versa.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
I do. Is all right. So it may be a harsh question,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like, who cares?
What do you mean?
If you have an issue in society,
Mm-hmm.
I ask myself, who cares? Why does it actually matter to me that this issue?
Oh, about your issue?
Yeah.
So like if I
It's a
like, give me an
thought-provoking
example. Give me an
question.
example of
So
an issue, and then who
so
cares?
like abortion.
Okay.
Who cares?
Who cares? That's a good question.
Why do you care so much? Why do you think it matters?
Yeah. Why should it matter?
Why should it matter? Right?
Racism. Who cares?
Who cares? Right? It boils down.
Sexism. Who cares?
Who? It's interesting because everything points up.
Mm-hmm.
Everything points up.
Mm-hmm.
And so if it points up, then ultimately you're going to wrestle with two questions, right? Who has the right and who has the authority? You're going to get yourself to that very difficult question, and then when you get there, you recognize it's not even about you in the first place. Things that may have been done to you, things may have been happened to your family, but ultimately it's not about you. Right? I felt that. Right? When they was trying to what's the word? I forgot what it's called. But when they try to buy up low-income neighborhoods,
Gentrify.
That hurt me to my core. Because I watched my mom work her whole life, right? Raised me, right? And somebody with money like that, let me just give you 80 grand. Go. The whole neighborhood. That hurt me to my core. I'm in tears in the train. Like, how can you do this to my family? I hated every white person that I saw. And they didn't even have to be white. It's just what's crazy is that I immediately thought white. Immediately thought white. But then I have to sit back and be like, bro, who really cares though? When I look at my mom, she's the biggest believer I've ever met. You cannot unconvince her that prayer doesn't work. Do she care? Who she trusts? Chris, why do you actually care, bro? If she doesn't. So I think we have to, when it comes to working with young people, it's going to be very, I think the main task is to help them to get out of themselves. That's what I'm trying to get at, because it's crazy. We're so selfish. It becomes self-righteousness, right?
Yeah.
So that's how selfish we are, and to the point that we think our selfishness is righteous. And so it's like the main task is to get them out of themselves first so they can think. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because that's where we want to get people at. We want to get people to the process of rationality. Now, why is reasoning important? It's a God-given gift. He gave us the ability to reason. He gave us he gave us logic, right? The laws of logic. He gave it to us so we can understand how things are. The enemy is removing that and just giving us raw emotion. He doesn't want us to think. Bro, it's simple. It's not really profound, but it's just simple. If you use the laws of logic and rationality and thinking, the things that God has naturally given to you, you have a better chance of seeing right and wrong.
I agree. But I would take it one step further, because I do agree with you, but I think there has to be a framework to to do the work of logic and reason, right? And so I
Yeah.
think people are still reasoning. They're just reasoning wrong. So you think people aren't reasoning at all?
If you're actually using logic, I think logic leads to one thing.
Here's the interesting. Yeah. Okay. So here's the interesting thing. There was a guy, psychologist guy, who did some research, and he was talking about this idea that you can, like, the human mind has the ability to create relationships between any two things.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's what's happening.
Solomon said that. Yeah, you're right. A man could think it was right, but it leads to death.
And so I think, once again, when we're talking about reasoning, I'm not talking about right reasoning. I'm talking about our capacity to create relationships between anything.
Yeah.
We can make anything make sense if we think about it long enough and hard enough.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what's happening. People are making connections between things that shouldn't have connections. They're building relationships between things that shouldn't have relationships.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
I get you. Yeah.
And so
okay.
That's why I think it's reason, but it's the framework by which we reason. I think that's important because we have to have safeguards for our reasoning. Because if it gets out of whack, then we gonna start building relationships between things that shouldn't be built.
Yes.
And I think that's what's happening. And so I think that's why the scriptures, the gospel, the Bible is so important, because what it does is it gives us that framework. It gives us those guardrails to build those relationships between things.
Yep.
And we don't get off track, or at least we don't get off track to the point where we're doing wild stuff we shouldn't be doing.
Oh,
now,
correct.
That only goes so far, because there are people who step into that and intentionally try and manipulate it to say that it allows for the building of relationships between things that shouldn't be built. Right. But once again, I would argue that those people are starting with a different framework and imposing it on Jesus, God, Bible, scriptures, so on and so forth. Right.
Yeah.
And I think, to go back to your original point, though, about who cares, and like this idea of like getting kids outside themselves. I mean, that's exactly what I was thinking. Once again, like pointing them back to who Jesus is. Like, okay, cool, you voted this way. Great. What does Jesus have to say about that? Like, what does this mean for how you should now live? Right. Regardless of whether the person you wanted to win or not is in office, our responsibility is to pray for them. According to the scriptures, that's our responsibility.
Yeah.
Right. So we should do that. We should ask ourselves the questions like, what is God doing? What is God wanting to do? And then, like, if these issues, whatever these issues are so important to me, what am I willing to do about them? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What am I willing to do to solve these issues, or to step into these issues, or to help people who are experiencing those challenges that I think are incredibly important to what makes this country, right?
I agree.
I think if people did that, right, then I think there'd be some incredible things happening in our country right now.
I believe that too.
You know what I mean?
I do. I think, man. Okay, last thing. Because it blew my mind Another thing that I think that we have to help Gen Z with, and if you're a youth pastor, is to teach wisdom itself. We had a podcast on that, right? The idea.
Go check it out if you heard it.
The idea of wisdom, and I think the main purpose, that the reason why God gave us wisdom, is so that we can be preserved. I think that's the main task of wisdom.
From destruction?
From destruction. Is to preserve us from that. To preserve our humanity.
So we can stop making mistakes and walking down paths that are going to lead us to degradation, destruction, debauchery, the whole line.
We don't really have to create anything. I don't think we do. I think we can, in a sense of, we can create a chair, we can create a mic. But in a sense of, when it comes to society, what is there to actually create? Nothing. I think there is actually a blueprint. And I think wisdom is given to preserve that blueprint. And so I think
because we're creating our own thing right now.
Exactly.
And it's bad. And it's news.
Bad, my G. And so I think when you Sorry. Well, I think, but you get what I'm saying?
I do.
That's the whole thing of,
I do.
you know, if I can grasp anything of what wisdom is, I
Yep.
can understand that it is here to preserve our morals and ethics. And I think the enemy has placed something in our hands, i.e. the phone, to remove reason and logic and thinking.
Facts.
And to base everything off
Feeling,
pure emotion. Yeah.
Being emotionally persuaded, and
Yeah.
it's crazy. Yes, it's
Yeah.
we're at an interesting cultural moment for sure.
Mhm.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
But once again, I think the church has been through things like this throughout the ages.
Way worse, actually.
Yeah, the
Death.
Roman Empire, all those different civilizations. And we have thrived. We have survived. People have risen up and led the church, and we've seen revival. And so I think it's possible again. I don't think like Gen Z is doomed. I don't think Gen A is doomed. Like God can use them to do incredible things, and is like, as much as we're seeing all the nonsense on social, we're seeing revivals happen on college campuses, revivals happen at high schools. I was reading something the other day. Like there was a kid at a high school, his senior year, he led 894 people to Christ, bro.
Let's go.
Wild.
Work.
On fire.
Work, my G.
Everybody getting it.
Work.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Everybody getting that work.
Yeah,
It's and so like there's incredible things happening all over the place. Like God is at work. It reminds me of the prophet Elijah. Like, Lord, is there no one else? He's like, what are you talking about? I've got a remnant of 10,000 in Israel. Like, what do you mean, bro?
Right.
Who do you think you are?
Right.
You're not the only one.
Right.
And that's that self-righteousness, right? Only me, God. I'm the only one who's got it figured out. I'm the only one who voted right. I'm the only one who really knows. And it's like, what are you talking about, bro? I got people who love me and serve me everywhere in all different places and spaces, building my kingdom.
It's true, man.
And so
it's true.
I think we got to continue to stay tapped in, continue to stay hopeful, recognize like what God has done throughout the church, throughout history, and that like we're going to be okay. You know what I mean? We were going to be okay if Kamala was in office. We're going to be okay if Trump's in office. You see what I'm saying? And like, what do I mean when I say that? I mean, in the end, it's going to all work out. That's what I mean. Yeah. I mean, in the end, Jesus is going to have his way, build his kingdom, and bring his people to himself. And so does that mean that my life is squeaky clean and peachy? Nope. Sure doesn't. But what that does mean is that God will have his church.
Yeah.
And we're a part of that.
Yeah.
And so we get to hope in that.
It's true.
And we ask him, God, how do you want to use me now, right where I'm at? And so,
true, why does it actually matter, man?
Well, yeah, I think that's a great question. And here's why, because it points back to the reality of like, yo, there has to be a standard. And this thing that I'm experiencing is bumping up against this standard, right? That has been instilled in me by God.
Yeah.
And so now I need to go back to my creator, hear from him, understand how he has ordered and designed things, and then go about basically serving, loving, preaching, communicating in a way that moves us back towards that.
Yeah, exactly.
Moves us into his kingdom.
Exactly. Yeah. All things.
And like once again, like it's true, bro. Like if someone doesn't know Jesus, why does it matter?
Why does it matter, bro? Yeah.
Okay, I got you to vote Republican, but you don't love the Lord. I got you to vote Democrat, but you don't love the Lord.
Yeah.
Okay.
Come on, bro.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I got you to vote independent, but you don't love the Lord. I got you to vote Green Party. I got you to abstain.
Yeah.
Like why does it matter?
Yeah. Seriously.
You know what I'm saying?
It is not to be mean.
No.
It really is to pose.
Like, once again, like we have positioned this thing, we've given it more power than we should. As Christians, specifically. We've given it more power than we should. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And we're behaving as if our hope is in this, and it's not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Facts. Big facts. And it's yeah. Man, I can go for days, bro.
Yep.
But I think that
it's good, bro.
It is it's an intentional question, man. Why does it really matter, bro? Why do you actually care? Because you have to wrestle with that. Why do you think this is right? I think that is what we have to start. I'm done.
Okay.
Done.
All right, man. Well, another episode in the books. Like we always say, beginning of the conversation, not the end. Question,
sir.
comments, concerns, hit us up. Once again, we want to dialogue about these hard things, challenge, pose hard questions, say things that make you uncomfortable, make us uncomfortable.
Yeah.
We're grateful that you guys are on this journey with us.
Thank you.
We love you, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace.